the findings of Sir Brian Langstaff's official report into the infected blood scandal. Sir Brian Langstaff confirming and concluding that it was not an accident, that there were a catalogue of failures and that there was downright deception by the NHS and the government. Well, his report today says infections occurred because doctors, the blood services and successive governments failed to put patient safety first. Sir Brian also emphasises in his report published this afternoon that now is the time for proper compensation to be paid to all those who were wronged. Let's take a look at the findings in more detail. They have been literally released in the last few seconds. The report saying this: UK blood services failed to ensure rigorous enough donor selection to exclude higher risk blood donors, including collecting blood from prisons until 1984. The report says transfusions were frequently given when they were not clinically needed, and patients were not warned of the risks. Patients were knowingly exposed, the report says, to unacceptable risks of infection, despite the fact that the risk posed by blood and blood products was well known. The damage caused was compounded by the reaction of successive governments, the NHS and the medical profession. Successive governments refused to admit responsibility to save face and expense. The report also found that the response to the infections made things worse, including repeated failures by governments and the NHS to acknowledge that victims should not have been infected. The report criticises the absence of any meaningful apology and redress. It also says successive governments repeatedly used inaccurate, misleading and defensive lines, including cruelly telling people that they'd received the best treatment available. And the deliberate destruction of some documents and the losses of many others.
What I've been looking at are people from families across the UK who've gone into hospital for treatment, and over 30,000 have come out with infections which were life-shattering. And 33,000 of those have died, and deaths keep on happening week by week. What I've found is that disaster was no accident. People put their trust in doctors and the government to keep them safe, and that trust was betrayed. And then the government compounded the agony by telling them that nothing wrong had been done, that they'd had the best available treatment, and that as soon as tests were available, they were introduced. And both of those statements were untrue. That's why what I'm recommending is that compensation must be paid now, and I've made various other recommendations to help to make the future of the NHS better and treatment safer.